The Panama Canal is the fastest way to get ships from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But what if there was a better option? A canal through Nicaragua? I'm Regis, and today we'll be looking at a project 500 years in the making. A project that's dealt with volcanoes, civil wars, nuclear bombs. Oh, and not to mention a mysterious Chinese billionaire. But first, we need to remind ourselves why. The Panama Canal is so important. Along with the Suez Canal, it's the most famous waterway on the planet. And it's easy to see why. Just look at this map. The Panama Canal lets ships from the Atlantic, from Europe in particular, cut through the landmass of Central America and easily reach the Pacific on the other side. More than 10,000 ships use the Panama Canal every year. Together, they shift 500 million tons of goods. These ships pay a toll to use the canal. For a big ship, it can cost $500,000. But with all the time they save, it's definitely worth the cost. Without the canal, the fastest way for a ship to travel from the Atlantic to the Pacific would be to sail south to Chile, through the Strait of Magellan, then travel all the way back north again. It takes weeks at best, or more likely months, and that's if you even survive. The Strait of Magellan is infamously stormy. It's one of the most dangerous stretches of water in the world. That's why this canal is so important. That's why shipping companies pay so much to use it. But in the last few years, the canal has had a few problems. It has the capacity to handle up to 4 million cargo containers every year. That sounds like a lot, but with global trade getting busier and busier, it might not be quite enough. In the last few years, some ships have found themselves queuing for a slot, crowding around the entrance to the canal while they wait for a chance to go through. On top of that, the canal isn't actually wide or deep enough for some of the world's biggest ships. The biggest type of ship that can use the canal, sometimes called the Panamax, is about 50 meters across. Again, that sounds like a lot, but the largest cargo ships are bigger than that, like this massive Irina-class vessel, which is 60 meters wide. This is exactly why Nicaragua wants to get involved. Panama is overstretched, and Nicaragua thinks they could offer something bigger and better. That's right, it's time to talk about the Nicaragua Canal. As we said at the start, this idea has been around for centuries. Let's jump back to the 1500s, when Spain controlled a big strip of land along the western coast of the Americas. They'd grabbed this land from civilizations like the Aztec Empire, and more recently than that, the Incas. There was a lot of silver and gold there, enough to fill entire ships, and the Spanish wanted to send these treasures back to mainland Europe. The Panama Canal didn't exist back then. That wasn't built until the 20th century. And the Spanish were worried by the Strait of Magellan, too stormy and too much risk. So they decided to set up a convoy system. A fleet of ships carried goods from Pacific ports to this strip of land in Central America. From there, the goods were transported overland by a train of mules and donkeys. When they reached the other side, the Atlantic Ocean, a second fleet of ships collected the goods, then carried them back to Europe. It was a simple system, and those mules did a good job. But do you know what would have made things easier? An interoceanic canal. Spain did a few surveys in 1551 and established some possible routes. One of those was through Panama, but another was through Nicaragua. But in the end, they decided it was too expensive. They stuck with their mules instead. A couple of centuries came and went. Still no canal. Not much going on. Then, in the 19th century, things suddenly started to change. Spain was attacked by France, and Spain's colonies saw this as a chance to push for independence. While Spain was distracted, they officially broke free and founded the Federal Republic of Central America. And this is where the story of the Nicaragua Canal really begins. Before we take an exact look at the Nicaragua Canal, we quickly want to thank CyberGhost VPN for making complex and in-depth videos, such as this one, even possible. When visiting places such as Nicaragua, Panama, or pretty much any country in the world, you've probably already experienced content being geo-blocked. Luckily, there is a solution, and this is where we introduce today's sponsor, CyberGhost VPN. With CyberGhost VPN, all of your traffic goes through a secure VPN tunnel, your IP address is hidden, and your data is encrypted. Thanks to CyberGhost, you can access all kinds of geo-restricted content, YouTube included. Simply change your online location and you can find better deals online, play games blocked in your region, and even access blocked libraries of over 40 streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+. What's even more important, CyberGhost VPN protects you against hackers and data brokers that want to sell your information online. CyberGhost's 38 million worldwide users have made it one of the most highly recommended VPN on Trustpilot. Over 21,000 people have rated it with 3 stars. CyberGhost VPN is available for all platforms, Windows, Mac OS, Android, iOS, and many others, and one subscription can be used for 7 devices, so you can even share it with your family and friends. With our link, http://cyberghostvpn.com Megabuilds, you get their best deal ever. Just $2. $3 a month, plus 4 months free, which is 84% off. There's a 45-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. It's a great product, I can recommend it, and by signing up using our link in the description, you also help us to create higher quality videos like this one. Thank you again to CyberGhost VPN, and now back to the video and the Federal Republic of Central America. This independent nation now officially controlled most of the land in Central America. And one of the first things they did? They approved the construction of a canal between the Atlantic and the Pacific. For them, this canal would be more than just a trade route. They saw it as a chance to become rich and relevant, a new superpower at the heart of global trade. In the words of Simón Bolívar, a South American revolutionary writing at the time, this magnificent location between the 2 great oceans could in time become the emporium of the world. Where did this republic want to build their canal? In Nicaragua, not in Panama. And there's one pretty simple reason for this. Panama wasn't part of the republic. Now, the Federal Republic's canal would have looked a little something like this. A ship from the Atlantic would start by traveling up the San Juan River, widened and redirected in a number of places, but generally left to follow its natural path. Eventually, the ship would arrive on Lake Nicaragua. It's naturally landlocked. But if a canal was built from here to here, then that ship could continue out from the lake and straight into the Pacific Ocean. That all makes sense in theory, right? But the Federal Republic had a problem. Without the support of Spain, they were no longer a wealthy country. That was part of the reason why they wanted to build the Nicaragua Canal in the first place. But it also meant they couldn't afford to build it, not without foreign investors. They decided to ask the United States for help. After all, the US had recently gained their independence too, and they'd also benefit from an easy way to get goods from the Pacific to the Atlantic. The United States was tempted, but in the end, they turned the project down. They weren't convinced that the Federal Republic of Central America was stable enough to work with. As it turned out, the US was totally right. A civil war broke out just a few years later, and the republic broke up into smaller nations, including Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, and of course, Nicaragua. Now, for Nicaragua's new government, the dream of that canal lived on. They approached the United States again, and this time, the US was much more keen to get involved. As we already said, America had a lot to gain from a route through Central America. The West Coast, in particular, loved the idea of easier access to Europe. By the end of the 19th century, the U.S. House of Representatives had officially set up the Nicaraguan Canal Commission. They surveyed that route, the one that followed the San Juan River, then crossed Lake Nicaragua, and estimated that it could be turned into a viable shipping route at a cost of roughly $140 million. In today's money, that's closer to $5 billion. But this is where things get complicated. While talking to Nicaragua about building a canal, America was also talking to Panama. Or, rather, they were talking to France, who had been trying and failing to build a canal in Panama for the last couple of decades. France had basically given up on the project. It was harder and more expensive than they'd expected it to be. and wanted to cut their losses. So they'd offered the US the chance to buy all the work they'd done so far. It wasn't a lot, but it was better than nothing. They'd done some preliminary clearing and basic digging and set up some workers and equipment. They were willing to sell all this to America for $40 million. It was a tough decision: take on a failing project in Panama or start a project in Nicaragua from scratch. A lot of American politicians preferred the Nicaragua option. But things changed when the French began pushing a load of negative press about Nicaragua. They funded a newspaper story about a volcanic eruption at Mount Momotombo, not far from the proposed canal. They also printed a bunch of pamphlets and stamps to make sure that nobody important missed the news. They were desperate for America to take the Panama Project off their hands, and it worked too. The thought of a volcano made Congress nervous about building in Nicaragua. In 1902, they voted to build the Panama Canal instead. Just like that, the plans for Nicaragua were totally thrown out. And by 1914, 10 years and more than $300 million later, the Panama Canal first opened. End of story? No, not quite. In the decades since, the idea of building a Nicaragua canal has never quite gone away. There's something we haven't really talked about yet. Nicaragua is closer to America than Panama, and that means, for ships traveling from East Coast to West Coast, a Nicaragua canal would actually be a significantly shorter route. That's part of the reason why the US Congress preferred the Nicaraguan option in the first place. And as soon as that news about volcanoes died down, they started to think about the Nicaraguan Canal again. In the 1960s, it was brought up as part of a project called Operation Plowshare. Get ready for this. It's one of the strangest ideas that the United States ever had: nuclear bombs, as a way to dig holes, as a way to dig canals. This project never took off for obvious reasons, but for a while they were really serious about it. Apparently, building a canal using nukes was more than 10 times cheaper than using more traditional methods. After that, a few more decades went past. Russia put together a proposal, then decided it was too expensive. The UAE got involved, then backed out too. Eventually, 2012 came around. And that finally brings us to Wang Jing. As we mentioned at the start, he's a Chinese businessman with a mysterious reputation. Before 2012, barely anyone knew about him, especially outside of China. He was born in Beijing in 1972. And as he said himself, "In all these years, I've lived a very ordinary life." That's not entirely true. At some point, he started a business in Cambodia, mining gold and precious stones. Slowly but surely, he started to get rich. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, an announcement came out of Nicaragua. They'd signed a deal with Wang Jing to establish the Hong Kong Nicaragua Development Group. That's the HKND for short. In the company's own words, after centuries of dreaming and planning, the idea of a Nicaraguan canal linking the Atlantic-Pacific global shipping routes is headed toward becoming a reality. It all felt a bit strange, though. Wang Jing had no background in construction projects, let alone something as big as this one. He also happened to be friends with the son of the Nicaraguan president at the time. Was that the reason this deal had gone through? As well as that, it wasn't clear how he was going to afford it. By that time, he was actually one of the richest men in China, but the canal was expected to cost in the region of $50 billion, which was money that he really didn't have. Some experts guessed that Wang Jing was some kind of front for the Chinese government. Maybe they were operating in the background somewhere, giving him financial support. Wang Jing denied that. In interviews, he explained that he was planning to find investment groups to help him pay for the project. And over the course of 2012 and 2013, he did manage to convince some investors to get involved. It wasn't long before some plans were put together. We'll look at those in a second. But first, if you're enjoying this video and like to see similar content in the future, don't forget to subscribe to Megabuilds. Anyway, back to those plans. Wang Jing's proposal was slightly different to that plan from the Federal Republic back in the 1800s. Instead of following the course of the San Juan River, a full canal would be built from the east of the country to the waters of Lake Nicaragua. From there, a second smaller canal would continue through to the Pacific, and it would be built using nukes. Sorry, just kidding. It would be built using a combination of dry excavation, that's basically just digging, and dredging of Lake Nicaragua. The lake wasn't deep enough for cargo ships, so the bottom needed hollowing out. This work was predicted to take 5 years in total and employ 50,000 workers. By the time it was finished, the route was expected to be 278 kilometers long. Importantly, it would also be deeper and wider than the Panama Canal, with enough space to take on the largest ships on the planet. In 2014, construction began. Wang Jing himself turned up in Nicaragua to speak at the opening ceremony. The Nicaraguan government was very by all this. Their country had been dreaming of an east-west canal for hundreds of years, and now that dream seemed closer than ever before. Wang Jing, of course, was expecting most of the profits from the project. But even so, experts thought that the canal had the potential to double Nicaragua's GDP. Not everyone in the country was impressed, though. In 2015, activists started to take to the streets to protest the planned canal. They were worried about their livelihoods. The canal would cut through hundreds of communities, forcing families away from their homes. There were environmental worries as well. The canal would need to cut through some pristine rainforests and damage the habitats of endangered species like tapirs, jaguars, and spider monkeys. The work might have also introduced some harmful substances to Lake Nicaragua. That's the largest source of fresh water in the entire country. Contamination would have been a disaster. But as it turned out, no one had anything to worry about. In 2015, a news story broke. How do you manage to lose $9 billion in 4 months? That's exactly what had happened to Wang Jing after a massive crash in the Chinese stock market had wiped away most of his wealth. He denied that it would affect the Nicaragua Canal project, but that wasn't exactly true. Since that opening ceremony in 2014, no progress had been made on the canal. 2015 came and went, then 2016, 2017. And in 2018, Wang Jing's company, Hong Kong Nicaragua Development Group, disappeared virtually overnight. Their office was left empty, with no forwarding address. And if you visit their website, this is all that you see. Everything went quiet for a while after that. But in 2024, Nicaragua officially announced that they'd cut ties with Wang Jing and his company. This latest project was over, once and for all. It was yet another failed attempt in this long, long story of the Nicaragua Canal. But the country hasn't given up. When they cut ties with Wang Jing, they also announced the formation of a new Great Canal Authority with a board of 6 government officials. It seems as though they're still looking for a way to get this centuries-old dream to happen. But do you think they'll ever manage to build this canal? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to try CyberGhost VPN, make sure to use our link in the description. CyberGhost VPN will protect your data while you browse and give you full access to all blocked content on the internet. It's a great VPN, just like their current deal for $2. €3 a month and 45 days money-back guarantee, so it's totally risk-free. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.